Black waitress ordered to wear a dog collar for a rich client's entertainment. Her reaction shakes the room. The polished silverware glinted under the chandelier lights, and the low hum of refined conversation filled the private club. But behind the elegance, Tiana stood in the server's prep area, staring down at a leather dog collar. Her hands trembled slightly as she held it, heart pounding with disbelief. A note attached read, "Theme night, wear this for the VIP at table 9. Tiana wasn't just a waitress. She was a single mother. A former social worker. A woman who'd taken this job only after life backed her into a corner. She had served these men their steaks, refilled their bourbons, and smiled through dismissive remarks. But this? This was different. She folded the collar gently, set it aside, smoothed her apron, and stepped toward the dining room. Have you ever faced a moment where dignity demanded more than silence? Where are you watching from? Tiana Jackson had never planned to work in a place like this. The Calhoun Club, a members-only retreat tucked into the hills just outside Charleston. It was the kind of place where old money met new ambition, where linen napkins were pressed so sharply they could cut you, and the guests never remembered your name, just your tip percentage. But life rarely follows a straight line, especially for someone like her. She'd once worked as a youth counselor for at-risk teens, a job she loved more than it paid. When funding dried up, she found herself bouncing between part-time gigs, juggling rent, daycare, and groceries. The club had offered steady income, good hours, just enough space to breathe. At 39, with a 9-year-old boy at home, Tiana didn't have the luxury of turning down stability. Not anymore. The Calhoun Club was elegant, yes. But it had its cracks, invisible to most. Unspoken rules hung in the air like smoke. Smile, nod, never correct a guest. Especially not the wealthy regulars, the legacy tables whose names weren't just in the reservation book, but carved into brass plaques by the fireplace. Tiana had learned to navigate it all. Her poise was impeccable. Her uniform crisp. Her eyes always kind, even when the comments weren't. "Darlin', could you lean in when you pour that wine? I like the view. You must be one of those strong single mamas. That's sweet. You remind me of my old housekeeper, bless her heart." She swallowed the discomfort because she had to. Because the rent didn't care how many times she bit her tongue. One guest in particular had become the talk of the staff, Winston Keller III, the club's newest elite member. A tech billionaire with a taste for extravagance and cruelty disguised as charm. He liked themes, costumes, and pushing boundaries. He also liked watching people squirm. "He's back this Friday," whispered Camille, one of the other waitresses, during the morning staff huddle. "And guess who's his server?" They all turned to look at Tiana. She blinked. "Why me?" "Because you're composed," Camille said with a sad smile. "And because you never say no." That Friday arrived faster than she expected. The prep list had been unusually detailed. Decanted wine, imported oysters, vintage jazz playing softly in the background. A clipboard had been passed around that morning with VIP requests, but Tiana hadn't looked at the last page until right before her shift. That's when she saw it. A box on the shelf near the server station. Inside it, a black leather dog collar, complete with a silver buckle and a tag that said, "Property of Table 9. At first, she thought it was a mistake. A joke. Then the note attached. "Theme night. Please have your server wear this for the amusement of Mr. Keller. He loves creative presentation." Her stomach dropped. She looked up to see Darren, the floor manager, watching her. "Is this real?" she asked quietly. He nodded once. "It's a VIP request. You don't have to wear it, but you know how things work here." "What does that mean?" "It means it's your choice. But if you cause a scene, don't expect much support." His words landed like bricks. Tiana stared at the collar for a long moment. She thought of her son, Malik, asleep at home with his Spider-Man blanket and a stack of library books beside his bed. She thought of the electric bill, still unpaid. She thought of her mother's voice, strong, southern, full of faith, saying, "Baby girl, they can take your job, but they can't touch your dignity unless you hand it to them. She folded the collar, set it aside, and tied her apron a little tighter. She would not wear it. When she stepped into the dining room, table 9 was already filled with laughter. Winston Keller sat at the head, flanked by 2 men in tailored suits and a woman in an emerald dress who barely looked up from her phone. Winston's smile dropped the moment he saw Tiana, collarless, standing tall. "Well," he drawled, lifting his glass. "Someone missed the dress code." "I came dressed for the job I was hired to do, sir," she replied, voice calm but unwavering. The table chuckled uneasily. Winston leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Are you declining a personal request from a platinum member?" "I'm declining to be entertainment," Tiana answered softly, but loud enough for the next table to glance over. Darren hovered nearby, stiff with tension. Keller gestured dismissively. "You know what? Bring me another server. One with a sense of humor." Tiana didn't move. Instead, she walked toward the podium near the live piano, normally reserved for wedding toasts or birthday announcements, and gently tapped the microphone. It screeched softly, then steadied. "I'd like to say something," she said, voice trembling for just a second before it grew steady. "Not just to the guests, but to anyone who's ever had to smile through disrespect to keep food on the table." The room quieted. "I've worked here for over a year," she continued. "I've served with care, patience, and pride. But tonight, I was asked to wear something meant to humiliate me. And I say, no job, no paycheck, is worth that." Gasps. A few awkward laughs. A hush. Some people think money buys them everything, even the right to degrade others. But I have a son. And one day, he'll ask me what I did when someone tried to put a collar on my neck. And I want to be able to tell him. I stood up. Silence. A few claps. Then more. One man in a navy suit stood up. Then a woman with silver hair and pearls. And then, someone else. In the far corner of the room, a man stood. Quiet. Watching. He wasn't clapping, not yet. He was thinking. Measuring something invisible. A civil rights attorney. A former judge. Someone who understood exactly what just happened, and who wouldn't let it disappear. The moment passed. The lights didn't flicker. The earth didn't shake. But the room had changed. Winston Keller slowly rose, muttered something, and stormed out, his entourage behind him. Tiana stepped down, heart pounding. She had no idea what would happen next, whether she still had a job, whether she'd crossed a line too far. But for the first time in a long time, she felt free. When Tiana walked out of the dining room that night, she didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. Her hands were trembling, heart pounding as she pushed open the staff-only door, heading straight for the back hallway where the air always smelled faintly of lemon oil and freshly steamed linen. She leaned against the cool plaster wall and tried to breathe. The silence that had followed her words in the dining room hadn't been the kind of applause people might dream of. It was heavier than that. Like the weight of years pressing into the moment. Not just her own years working, struggling, enduring, but generations before her. Her great-grandmother had been a housemaid. Her mother had cleaned hospitals. And here she was, being told to wear a dog collar. She wiped her palms on her apron and took a steadying breath, just as Elena, the head hostess, quietly approached. "Tiana," she whispered, glancing around to make sure no one else was in earshot. "What you did, that was brave. He's furious, but people in there, they heard you." Tiana nodded, still too shaken to speak. Her pride wasn't in having caused a scene. It was in choosing her dignity over her job. She knew what that meant. Bills. Rent. Malik's after-school program. Her small emergency fund wouldn't stretch far. "I just couldn't do it," she said softly. "I won't let my son see me humiliated and call it a paycheck." Elena bit her lip. "You might want to get your things. The manager's in his office, and he's calling legal. Said you broke protocol." Tiana gave a dry laugh. Protocol? For refusing to be treated like a prop. She didn't wait for more. She headed to the locker room, each step deliberate. She gathered her things, her purse, her sweater from her locker, and then walked calmly to Mr. Rain's office. He was seated behind the dark oak desk, the same one he used to scold servers for misplacing wine keys or overfilling water glasses. He looked up as she entered. No emotion. Just cold, rehearsed authority. "Tiana," he began, "you directly disobeyed a special request by a high-value client. That kind of insubordination puts the club's reputation at risk." Tiana stood tall. "You asked me to wear a dog collar. That's not service, that's degradation. No part of my job description includes surrendering my humanity." There was a pause. The kind of silence that comes when two people realize they live in completely different worlds. "You're dismissed," he said flatly. "Security will escort you out." Tiana didn't flinch. "I'll walk myself." As she turned, Mr. Raines added, "You'll be blacklisted. No other high-tier establishment in this city will touch you." She paused at the door, hand on the handle. "If they're anything like this place, then maybe I'm better off." She walked out without a second glance. Outside, the night had grown quiet. Spring rain was just beginning to fall, soft, steady, almost like a cleansing. She took the long way home, not ready to face Malik just yet. He was 10, but already smart beyond his years. She hated the idea of telling him she'd lost her job again, especially for something he was still too young to fully understand. At the corner near her apartment, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Elena. Just 3 words. "It's going viral." Tiana blinked. She clicked the link. A grainy cell phone video, taken by someone in the dining room. Her voice, calm and clear, echoed through the speakers. "They asked me to wear a dog collar. I said no. Not because I'm angry, but because I was raised to know I am a human being." The clip ended in stunned silence. Below it, comments were flooding in. "Unreal. What kind of club is this? Her Grace. I'm in tears." She didn't shout. She didn't curse. She stood in truth. That is power. Tiana covered her mouth, overwhelmed. She hadn't done it to make a statement. She just couldn't stay quiet. Another message came in. This time from a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Tiana, this is attorney Elaine Brooks. I was in the dining room tonight. Please call me. I believe we have a legal matter worth pursuing, and a public conversation to start." Tiana sat down on the front stoop of her building, rain falling lightly on her shoulders. Her phone buzzed again. And again. People were reaching out. Strangers. Former co-workers. Journalists. Civil rights groups. The moment she had feared might ruin her was turning into something else, something larger than her. Still, doubt whispered in her mind. What if it all faded? What if she was just another news cycle? But then she thought of Malik, sitting at home, probably finishing his homework. She thought of the way he looked up to her, even when she was exhausted. Even when she had nothing left to give but a warm hug and a peanut butter sandwich. If nothing else, she had shown him something tonight. That dignity is not for sale. The next morning, the news vans were parked outside the club. Reporters gathered by the wrought iron gate, demanding answers. Tiana stayed inside her apartment, trying to keep things normal. She made breakfast, helped Malik with his socks, packed his school lunch. But every few minutes, her phone buzzed with a new request. Then came a knock at the door. Not cameras. Not reporters. It was a courier, holding an envelope. Delivery for Ms. Tiana Harris. She opened it carefully. Inside was a letter, typed and signed. Effective immediately, your termination is rescinded. We invite you to return with full honors and a public apology will be issued. Your actions brought light to a failure in our culture. We wish to do better. Please call to discuss next steps. There was no emotion in the words. Just damage control. Tiana read it twice, then folded it and placed it on the table. She looked at Malik, who had been watching quietly. "Are you going back, Mama?" She knelt down and smiled. "No, baby. Mama's not going backward." Orange circle if this moment touched your heart. Give this video a thumbs up. We still have more of Tiana's journey ahead. Tiana didn't sleep that night. Her apartment, though modest and safe, felt smaller than ever. The city hummed outside her window, but inside, it was quiet, too quiet. Her daughter, Lila, had long since fallen asleep, curled up under her cartoon blanket, unaware of the storm her mother was weathering in silence. Tiana sat at the kitchen table, the glow from the refrigerator casting long shadows across the linoleum. In front of her sat the unopened envelope from her manager, the one marked, "Final Paycheck." She hadn't touched it. She didn't need the money. She needed her dignity. Her phone buzzed quietly, a single vibration, not loud enough to wake Lila. Tiana glanced at it. It was a message from Naomi, one of the newer servers who had been too afraid to speak up the night before. "What you did. I'll never forget it. I'm proud of you. We all are." Tiana stared at the screen until her eyes blurred. She wasn't sure if the tears were from sadness, exhaustion, or something deeper, maybe the ache of finally being seen. By mid-morning, the video had gone viral. The footage, captured by a discreet diner near the bar, showed everything. The moment Tiana calmly stepped up, her voice unwavering as she revealed what she had been asked to do. The guests' gasps. The shift in the air. The manager's uncomfortable fidgeting. And then, the sound of slow, deliberate applause, starting from the far corner of the room. That applause, as it turned out, had come from none other than Amelia Brooks, a respected civil rights attorney known for taking on workplace discrimination cases, and winning them. By noon, Amelia's office had already reached out to Tiana. She met her at a quiet cafe off Lexington Avenue. No cameras, no suits, just two women, one exhausted, the other quietly burning with resolve. Amelia was in her late 50s, her hair silvering at the temples, her presence calm and commanding. She listened more than she spoke, letting Tiana recount everything, not just the collar incident, but the years of veiled comments, the moments of humiliation too small to report but too big to forget. "I didn't want to cause trouble," Tiana said softly, stirring her coffee. "I just wanted to work with dignity. Feed my child. Go home in peace." Amelia reached across the table, placing a steady hand over Tiana's. Dignity should never be negotiable. Tiana felt something unravel inside her then, not pain, but relief. A knot of silence that had lived in her chest for years finally loosening. Later that week, Tiana returned to the club. Not to apologize. Not to plead. But to speak. With Amelia at her side and a few press members invited by the attorney herself, Tiana stood at the very podium where she'd once read off soup specials. The dining room was mostly empty, save for a few former co-workers, including Naomi, and a handful of reporters. Tiana spoke simply, from the heart. "I was asked to wear something that no human being should ever be asked to wear. Not as a joke. Not for a tip. Not ever." She paused. Her eyes drifted over to the polished mahogany bar, the place where she used to wipe down wine glasses and listen to whispered laughter from people who never bothered to learn her name. "I stood my ground because I have a daughter. And I want her to know that silence is not strength. Strength is truth." The club's manager didn't speak that day. He resigned quietly the next morning. The eccentric client who made the original request? He was reportedly banned from several venues following the incident. Public pressure did what internal policies would not. And Tiana. She didn't go back to waitressing. Thanks to support from Amelia and a growing online community who rallied around her courage, Tiana received offers from advocacy organizations, even speaking engagements. But the most unexpected came from a culinary nonprofit that trained low-income women of color in food service management. They didn't just offer her a position. They asked her to lead a program on workplace dignity and leadership. It wasn't about revenge. It was about change. Speech balloon. Have you ever had to speak up when it was hard? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters more than you know. But even as her world shifted, even as doors opened that she never expected, Tiana remained grounded. She still walked Lila to school each morning. Still made pancakes on Sundays. Still tucked her daughter in with the same promise every night. You are loved. And your voice is strong. One evening, as the sun set low over the city, Amelia called. There's a conference in D.C. next month. Civil rights in modern workplaces. I want you to tell your story. Tiana smiled. Not out of pride but peace. I'll be there, she said. For every woman who's ever been told to stay quiet. And for the first time in a long time, she believed, truly believed, that the room would listen. The sun had barely risen over the city, but Tiana was already up, her phone buzzing non-stop from journalists, lawyers, and even celebrities wanting to hear her story firsthand. But she wasn't interested in fame, she was interested in change. Sitting at the edge of her bed with Ava snuggled close, Tiana looked at the screen and whispered, "This isn't just about me anymore." She tapped open an email from the civil rights attorney, Celeste Monroe, confirming a press conference scheduled for the next morning. At the club, panic had taken over. The board members were holding emergency meetings, the manager was placed on immediate suspension, and the VIP client, once treated like royalty, had quietly withdrawn his membership. But none of it mattered to Tiana. She hadn't asked for revenge. All she'd ever wanted was to be treated with basic human dignity. And now, for the first time in years, she felt it was within reach. The next morning, Tiana stood on the steps of the old courthouse downtown. The air was brisk, a little wind brushing her curls into her face. Behind her stood Celeste, tall and composed, and a quiet crowd of supporters who had seen the video and come to stand beside her. Tiana didn't have a script. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice didn't. "My name is Tiana Lewis," she began, eyes sweeping across the sea of microphones and cameras. "I've worked hard every day of my life. I've raised my daughter alone. I've cleaned messes no one else wanted to clean. I've smiled through humiliation. But what happened that night, being told to wear a collar like a pet for someone's amusement, it broke something in me. Not because I wasn't strong, but because I knew if I stayed silent, my daughter would grow up thinking silence is strength." A hush fell over the crowd. I spoke out not just for me. I did it for every woman, every worker, every mother who's ever been told their dignity has a price tag. The flash of cameras filled the silence that followed, and for once, Tiana didn't shrink away. She felt taller. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because she had. Celeste took over to announce that they would be filing a civil suit against the club for discriminatory practices, workplace harassment, and emotional abuse. But what made headlines wasn't the legal action, it was Tiana's poise, her message of quiet defiance, and the single sentence that echoed across every outlet: "Silence is not strength when it shields injustice." The video of her speech reached millions within hours. Later that week, Tiana returned to her favorite diner on the edge of town, not the upscale club, but the cozy place where waitresses wore aprons stitched by hand, and customers left extra tips not for service, but for kindness. The owner, an older man named Bill who'd seen the clip, offered her a job right away. Manager, full benefits, flexible hours. "You've always had a backbone, kid," he said, pouring her a fresh cup of coffee. "Now the whole world knows it." She laughed. A real, full laugh, the kind she hadn't heard from herself in years. "Thank you, Bill. But this time, I'm not just serving food. I'm starting something bigger." With Celeste's help and community support, Tiana launched a new initiative, Voices of Dignity, a support and legal aid fund for workers who face mistreatment in the service industry. And people came, not just with stories, but with hope. And amid all the interviews, the foundation meetings, and the speaking invitations, Tiana never missed one moment with Ava. Each night, she still tucked her daughter in with the same whispered prayer: "Be bold. Be kind. Be free." Bellhop Bell, if you've been moved by Tiana's strength and this story of quiet revolution, we invite you to subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt tales that uplift, empower, and remind us of the human spirit. The weeks that followed brought clarity Tiana never expected. Life didn't slow down. If anything, it grew louder. There were radio shows, interviews, messages from strangers across the country. Some thanked her. Others shared their own stories of being humiliated at work, of staying silent because they couldn't afford to lose the little they had. But beneath the noise, something quiet and beautiful had begun to grow. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a voice, steady, clear, and carrying the weight of dignity long denied. Yet one afternoon, as she sat in the small community office space where her new nonprofit was taking shape, a gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. She looked up. It was Marcia, the elderly woman who'd trained her on her very first day at the club. White-haired, wrinkled hands, and eyes that held something Tiana hadn't seen before, regret. "Can I come in?" Marcia asked. Tiana nodded. "Of course." Marcia sat down slowly, holding her purse in her lap like it was a shield. "I should have said something," she began, her voice trembling. "When they gave you that collar." I froze. I wanted to speak. I really did. But I thought, she's strong. She can handle it. And that's no excuse. "I'm sorry." Tiana didn't answer right away. She looked out the window at the quiet street below, where two boys were chasing a ball between parked cars. Then she looked back and smiled, gently. "We've all stayed silent when we shouldn't have. But you came. That matters." Marcia's eyes filled. She reached into her bag and pulled out something folded, an old staff photo. There they were, side by side, smiling in uniforms that didn't tell half the story of what went on behind those kitchen doors. "I hope your daughter grows up in a better world than we did," Marcia whispered. "She will," Tiana said softly, "because people are finally speaking." Later that evening, back home, Tiana tucked Ava in and kissed her forehead. The little girl looked up and asked, "Mommy, are you famous now?" Tiana chuckled. "No, baby. I just told the truth." Ava nodded, yawning. "You're still the best mommy." And just like that, the long day folded into stillness. Weeks turned to months. Voices of Dignity became more than a name, it became a movement. Small businesses reached out for guidance, restaurants requested training, and most importantly, workers began to speak up without fear. Tiana didn't seek the spotlight. She didn't need applause. Her reward came quietly, in the look of a young waitress who stood a little taller because she knew her worth, in the letter from a man in Ohio who said her video gave him the courage to report abuse at his factory job. And in her heart, she carried one lesson above all. Dignity isn't granted. It's claimed. In a world that often demands silence, her refusal to wear a collar became a symbol of something far more powerful than defiance. It became a testament to grace under pressure, to a mother's love, and to the quiet, unwavering strength of a woman who knew her value. As the seasons changed and the noise died down, Tiana stood at the edge of a community center stage, waiting to speak to a new group of trainees. She looked at the worn podium, took a breath, and began. "Let me tell you a story about a night when I was asked to wear something that no one ever should, and why I said no." And across the room, eyes lit up. Hearts leaned in. Because this wasn't just her story anymore. It belonged to all of them. Folded hands, if this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Speech balloon, comment below with your reflections or share your own story of courage. Thumbs up like this video if you believe dignity has no price. Bell subscribe for more powerful stories that move hearts and open minds.